Okay, so welcome everybody to the iPad New Faculty Training. So today I'm going to share my slides a bit with you, but we're going to do a bunch of different things together. Hopefully we will, I think we'll be able to wrap things up maybe a little bit early, but we do have a lot that we're going to go over, so we'll jump right in. So what we're going to do today is spend a little bit of time with just getting to know each other. I'm going to briefly go over the goals of the training, introduce you all to some of the IPE backgrounds broadly, and then also at our campus, go over some expectations and resources. And then we're going to spend some time learning about team-based learning and experiencing some of what we're going to be doing in the course so that you have an opportunity to know what it's like to be using the different pedagogical approaches that we have as a faculty member so that you can help to guide the students on this. So let's just start with some quick introductions. And so it'd be great to hear from everybody, names, professions, where you do most of your work, although that might be more from home than typical, but what kind of setting you are working in, why you're interested in IPE and what kind of skills you might bring. And then the task while people are listening is to also make a quick edit to your own Zoom screen name. So if you haven't experienced this before, we're going to be asking our students to do this. So I'm going to show you what it looks like for me. So I have on where my picture is, there's a little box with 3 little dots, and I can click on that 3 little dots for more actions. And there's a drop-down menu that includes the word rename. So if I do that, I can enter a new screen name. So I'm just going to put Wendy Madagoski, MD, just so that my professional credentials are there. So when I'm working with our interprofessional learners, then they'll know what professional background I have. So I'd invite you all to do that as well. Okay, so I'll just start while you all are figuring that out. So again, I'm Wendy. I'm a family physician by training, and I spend, my clinical work is at a family medicine practice through the university that's called AF Williams. It's located in newly renamed Central Park neighborhood. And I'm there part-time clinically, and then spend the rest of my time doing administrative and educational work on campus, which is really now at home. So that's my background. I became interested in IPE because of having really great experience as a student with physician assistants who were a part of my training. We were in the same classes together. Nurses who really oriented me to what was actually happening for patients in the hospital setting, and have had an opportunity to do some work interprofessionally as an educator when I spent some time in Missouri teaching about safety and quality. So that just totally convinced me that we need to bring people together to do this work. Okay, so I'll stop there and let's see. Mary, would you mind going next?
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Mackenberg-Moen. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I am the specialty director for our College of Nursing Acute Care Pediatric Nurse Practitioner program. I work from home, and I do clinical work. So right now I'm sitting in the Bismarck, North Dakota airport, making my way back home after doing a 7-day rotation in a tiny, tiny little emergency department in North Dakota. I am interested in IPE because I have a colleague who has been doing IPE the last couple of years and has really enjoyed the experience and thought I would as well. I don't have any big expectations at this point. I'm a little bit concerned about taking on a brand new course and making sure I know how to do it correctly. Since there's so many sections, I'm sure we're looking for some consistency across sections. So that is my biggest concern, and I'm looking forward to the experience.
Great, thank you, Mary. We have a lot of things that we help to provide faculty with so that they can have a common experience in each of the classrooms. So we will provide maybe more than you would like in that
Great.
regard.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Amisha, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good. It's always good. It's a blessing when the internet cooperates even slightly. So thank you. I am a dentist by training. I am a kind of a pseudo new faculty member because I actually taught in the course last year, but I joined on halfway through September, so I missed the faculty orientation, and then I had maternity leave, so I missed most of spring semester, so this is like my refresher. But I'm really excited to be back. It's fantastic. I work at the School of Dental Medicine. I am clinical assistant professor there, and then I am also the acting director of diversity programming there. So a few different hats. Mostly my work is from home right now as well because I'm administrative as well. Let's see here. So I am interested in IPE because I was actually I think I was one of the earliest classes. So I'm also alumni from CU School of Dental Medicine, and I was a student in one of the first cohorts of IPED, and it was amazing. I mean, I was just talking to some of my students from the pipeline, and we had a seminar, and I was telling them that to this day, when I need advice from a pharmacist, or I need, you know, just to bounce a question off of a PT, I text my IPE cohort from way back when. And so it was such a great piece of my education that I love the idea of being able to give back. And I really feel like it's the crux of how we can create true incredible patient outcomes for our patients as we work together. So I really feel like I want that to propagate into the work that my students do after they graduate. I think, did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, I think that's great. Terrific. Thank you. We have someone else who's called in who's has a phone number 781. Is that?
Try unmuting them, Wendy. See if that, I don't know, did they know how to from the phone or something?
Hello?
Hi there.
Hello? Can you guys hear me now?
We can,
Sorry.
yes. I had to unmute you.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. Okay, perfect. Sorry. This is Meredith. Meredith Beaton. Well, I couldn't get the Zoom to work on my phone, and, well, I guess semi-related to dentistry, my husband had a root canal done 3 weeks ago, and it's like the never-ending saga that is now an abscess, and he had an extraction. So I'm driving around in a town that I don't know very well because we're supposed to be on vacation, and here I am trying to find steroids. It's, you know, life is just fun, right? Right? But anyways, I am a nurse practitioner. I work in our Department of Hematology. I was actually in the middle of COVID recently promoted to be our clinical director of our advanced practice providers. So that's something new for me as well this fall. But I was so excited when I got this email about joining the faculty for the IPE group. When I was in nurse practitioner school, we had a very similar program that they were like just piloting with a couple of people, and it was through the NP school, the MDs, and then the PA school, and it was my most valuable experience in my entire training. I thought it was so awesome to come out of school and have this like cohort essentially of people that you could text with questions. And really just get a different perspective from their training on like, oh, well, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in this situation? Like, what have you run into with this? And it was so awesome. And so when I got the email, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to sign up like this. Yes, of course I want to get back to this. This is invaluable for our, you know, our future providers. So anyways, that was very exciting to me. Just as Mary was saying at the beginning, I'm nervous about wanting to, you know, to do this and do it well and really make sure that, you know, we're providing the best experience possible. So I'm looking forward to the 5 million resources that we'll be getting. You know, we've already gotten a lot of calendar invites, so please keep the information coming because because I feel like it's a lot, but I'm really excited about this. I also think that, you know, blood cancers and stem cell transplants and CAR T-cell therapy it's a lot of really cool stuff, but it's not stuff that students get a lot of exposure to in school. And so I'm really excited to maybe bring a little bit of that perspective to you know, all of the trainees. I think it is a unique patient population. And if I could get anybody else interested in that, that would also be a huge win. So anyways, thanks guys.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us while you're in the middle of really helping to coordinate care. So we know that what we're doing in the course is helping to make those kinds of things better. And so if you need to pop off at any time, we understand, just so you know. All right, well, thank you. What I am going to do now is transition a little bit into covering some general content. And I think that this will provide some framing for you all. Our goals for today are to get to know each other a little bit, which we started to do, and really talk about these 3 different roles for faculty in our IPE course. One is to promote interprofessional education and interprofessional collaboration. Second is to become a skilled and reflective facilitator using the team-based learning approach. And then finally is to be a team coach. I also want to make sure to answer as many questions as I can today for you all. We can certainly connect further afterwards and by email, but feel free to ask questions at any point. You can certainly use the chat box for that. Michelle's going to help to keep track of that. Meredith, you can just pipe up about that part. And I forgot to then let Reese and Allie and Michelle introduce themselves. I'm so sorry. Why don't you guys go ahead and do that as well? Michelle, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm Michelle Colorelli, and I am the instructional designer and faculty for IPES. I've been with IPE since 2014. Can you hear me? So I have connected my phone, does that work? And my Zoom account. And I think my fan interferes when I have a fan running. So all the lessons we learned with Zoom. But I'm the instructional designer and faculty, as I mentioned. I've been with the IPE since 2014. And I'm just really excited to meet you all and work with you in this new interface with Zoom. Now you're muted.
Reese.
Oh.
Hi, everyone. I am Reese Rowland. You've probably seen multiple emails from me at this point. I am the IPE Program Manager and Education Coordinator, and I've been with IPE since 2011. And Amisha, I remember your name. That's about it.
And Allie.
I'm Allie. I'm the IPE administrative assistant, so I do a lot of the back end stuff, and I manage the IPE help email. So if students need anything or if you need anything, I'm the one that handles that. And I've been here for almost 2 years now, so still kind of fresh, but it's been a great experience. So.
Terrific. Okay. We're going to dive in here. So I'm going to start with giving a very brief background to interprofessional education here on campus, and a little bit more broadly. So several years ago in the late 1990s, the Institute of Medicine started to initiate reports about concerns of safety and quality. And really, this was revolutionary information. And it really started a national dialogue and a global dialogue about problems of errors and system failures. And as part of that ongoing work, the Institute of Medicine, which is now, I think the Academies has a different name, they also spent some time thinking about how can we get to better care. and really identified that health professions education is a vehicle for that. Not only do we need to have better system processes, but we have to educate our learners in a way that enables us to do better than we have in the past. So that is really part of the foundation for interprofessional education becoming a topic, again, that was paid attention to across the health professions. It had been in the literature previously, and particularly in the 60s and 70s, there was some increased emphasis on interprofessional approaches, but it really started to gel in the 2000s. And the WHO actually has a definition of interprofessional education. So that formally is when students from 2 or more professions learn about, from, and with each other with a purpose to enable effective collaboration and improve health outcomes. So it's not just to have a good time, but it's actually to do the care that we provide together better. And we want that those learners to then be a part of these collaborative practice teams. And that is really our intention in our interprofessional work at the Anschutz campus as well. The good news is that because of all this work, we also have accreditation standards that are required by all the different schools to achieve some degree of education around interprofessional care and collaborative practice. And so all these different health professional programs now have requirements in their standards. And so they cannot be accredited, they cannot graduate people unless they do some interprofessional education work. That's a nice reinforcing piece for us. So at the University of Colorado, we actually have had a nice long history of interprofessional education even before some of these seminal documents came out and collaborative decisions across health professions. So in 1993, there was a chancellor, his name was Vincent Fulginetti, and right now we have a building on campus that bears his name, in part because of what he did here. So he mandated that all the health professions programs that had been on campus together for some time, that they actually organize and do something together. So he gave them a 1-year mandate to develop an interprofessional course on campus. And faculty from each of the different programs got together and they said, well, gosh, one of the things that we all teach together is ethics. And, or we all teach separately is ethics, but it all has a common core, and maybe that's what we should do. So that launched the Ethics in Health Professions course that started in 1998 and persisted until just a couple of years ago. Well, I guess now 7 years ago. But that really is our foundation, that we've come from this foundation of institutional centralized commitment and organization to get students together. And one of the most important pieces of that work was to actually then align schedules so that students are available on Wednesday afternoons to do this work together. So we moved to a new campus in 2007, and the same group that helped to develop that interprofessional ethics course really helped to promote, when the campus was being built out in Aurora, to have a space that actually allowed for interprofessional education. So hence the fact that although there are a few named buildings, a lot of the buildings, the education buildings, are collaborative spaces for our students and for our faculty. After that point in time, we definitely had some other structural things that were helpful in terms of actually designating a director for interprofessional education, receiving really wonderful grant funding from the Josiah Macy Junior Foundation to broaden the interprofessional education program. And that started a series of different pilots of structures. So we had a health mentors course, which was paralleled after very successful interprofessional education experience in Philadelphia. Then we transitioned to another model called Fundamentals. And in 2013 and 14, when the grant funding was starting to run out, there was some reorganization commitment centrally on campus to do this together and to provide funding in an ongoing way from each of the programs, and also the development of the iPad course structure, which we are currently in still. And then finally, we established the CU Center for Interprofessional Practice and Education, so transitioning our language in part from it being interprofessional education only to interprofessional practice and education, to really show our commitment to that collaborative practice need, and that our partners really need to be those that are in clinical care, not just in the educational alone setting. So that's our quick history of IPE. Our current vision is really broad. It's to transform health professionals and healthcare through having recognized interprofessional education and practice programs. We really are wanting to do a good job of this and have important outcomes met. And so therefore we need to prepare our health professional students, and we need to be innovative in our education and also in our scholarship. So always working on those two areas. And this year in particular, given some of the challenges that we have with the pandemic, definitely some innovative approaches are being explored. Here's who's involved. There was a good question about this earlier. We have students from the CHAPA, or Child Health Associate Physician Assistant program, dental medicine, nursing, and it's the bachelor level students from nursing that participate. Pharmacy students who are both the local pharmacy students as well as international pharmacy students, and physical therapy students. We occasionally have a couple of public health students who electively participate, but the bulk of the students are from the other programs. And this means that we have about a little over 700 students per year that participate in our program. Here's the broad overall structure that we have. We start with an orientation that happens for all the students in the fall semester. This year, it's going to be followed by a roles and responsibilities assignment that the team will do asynchronously together before they then start this iPad course in the spring. So the way that the course is run, it's the spring of first year into the fall of second year. And so what we're going to be entering in right now will be second year students that are familiar with the iPad course, but they had completed the first semester in the spring. We also have a wonderful simulation component that occurs at different times based on the program's needs. And that is with different teams than those students that participate in the iPad course based on, again, the timing of the clinical care for clinical rotations for the students. And then finally, we have a clinical integrations practicum where we have students participate in interprofessional collaborative experiences as part of their clinical work. This is something that is done within each program, but one thing we have in common is some assessments that we're doing across the programs to assess the students' collaborative practice skills. So that's the primary focus of that last piece right now. Okay, so this is a general overview right here. I have some more specifics here on the slides, and I'm actually going to skip, but I'm going to go to the iPad ones because this is what we're preparing for. So here's our 4 course outcomes. First of all, we want students to actually demonstrate knowledge, skills, and behaviors in our 3 content areas. The first is teamwork and collaboration, and there's definitely some basic science content around that. Values and ethics, that was primarily covered in the spring. And then this fall, we'll cover mostly the quality and safety content. We also want them to have a better understanding of their identity as a health professional and sharing that with the other collaborative practice members of the team. But we want them to know the specifics, too, of the roles and responsibilities of each health profession. And then finally, we want them to not just know about this and maybe believe in it, but actually demonstrate some skills in teaming. All right, so that's the general overview of the course. Again, I'm going to kind of skip some of these other pieces. If you haven't already watched the little video that we had about IPE, I'd encourage you to do that. I think it's a nice overview of what we do. And then here was the slide, which should have been earlier, but this will be a good resource for you to go back to if you need to see the names and emails for Reese, Ali, and then also Michelle. All right, so that was our quick jump into IPE and its history, both locally and globally. So I'm actually just gonna stop sharing here for a second so I can see you all a little bit bigger, and just pause and say, and ask if there's any questions about that history or what we're getting ourselves into. Okay, looks like we're pretty good. Again, feel free to just jot anything in the chat or speak up if need be. We're not a big group today. Okay, so next, I actually wanted to just jump a little bit into some of the things that we're expecting of faculty, and then we'll dive into practicing some of it. So with respect to some of our expectations, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Canvas so I can show you some of our resources. Let me back up one page, and then I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so Canvas has lots of different structures, and everyone can use things in a different way. I tend to not show the card view, but a lot of people will do this. They'll show the card view of the courses. And the one that I'm going to jump into right now and orient you to very briefly is our IPE Faculty Resources course. So this is a course that we started several years ago to be a repository of information, but it really just has, now it's like our hub. You know, we can't meet in person and hand out paper things to people right now, so it's all on here. So a lot of this is being updated still, so I just wanted to let you know that we're still in the midst of this, but I wanted to share a couple of things. I'm going to actually go into student view. I think that will make it a little bit easier. So you can see what's in there. So we just have a few things here right now. There's some results of our evaluations from the past spring. You don't really have to pay attention to that. And then we're going to go through some materials. I'm going to leave student view. I'm going to show you actually some of the other things that we have there. So we'll have all sorts of things in here, including specifics about the schedule. We have a manual and a toolbox. And so in the manual, which is still being updated a little bit, I just do want to point out a couple of really important things. First is that this is it's a complex course, and what we really need from each of you as faculty members is to stay abreast with where we are. And I'm glad that each of you are expressing that you're eager for this information, or maybe anxious about it because you know that you're jumping into something that has a lot of components. So we really want to make sure that you're able to participate in all the trainings and the orientations. We will be recording them, so if something comes up and you're unable to make it, please do watch them on 3x speed or whatever you need, just to make sure that you stay up to date. We also expect that faculty prepare for each session, and so part of the calendar invites and the materials that are going to be available to you on the course here, the faculty resources course, will be the faculty guide that will provide you with a stepwise approach to how to run the session. And then we also have on the student course all the pre-work. So there's about an hour of pre-work that we expect the students to do before each of the sessions. So there's content to read. They have to take their RAT quiz on that content in advance. And so that's part of what we want you to be familiar with as well, because we want you to be able to reinforce the knowledge that they've gotten through the pre-work. So it's about an hour's worth of pre-work. And then I would probably estimate about an hour to go through the faculty guide and make sure you've got yourself ready and prepared. And then it's also participating in our briefs and the session. So all in all, it really is, a couple of hours with the students directly, and a couple hours of preparation and our brief. So 5 to 6 hours a week of content time. So I just wanted to be very clear about that as we enter into the fall. And obviously you can stretch that out and do some of it at different times, but wanted to make sure that we're clear about what it does take. This year, in addition to having the briefs for our synchronous sessions, we're going to host some office hours for people that have questions, and then provide information through videos in advance for our asynchronous session. So we'll go over this a little bit more during the faculty orientation, but essentially we'll be providing you with times to connect with your peers and as other faculty members, and making sure that you are ready and getting some tips and tricks from each other. While I'm thinking about other faculty members, I do want to mention that we will make sure to pair you with experienced faculty, particularly because we are doing this asynchronously. It's a little bit harder to just run a room when you haven't experienced this before. Amisha, you have some familiarity with it from several views, but Mary, this is different for you. So we will be pairing you with another faculty member who's had experience with this, so they'll be working together on it. And same thing for you, Meredith, if you're still on. I'm not sure I can see that you're on still. Okay, so that is the general information I wanted to share about expectations in terms of preparation. There's going to be much more specific in the manual that when we have that finalized and we push it out to you all through here, we will update you on. The other thing to mention is that we do have lots of other resources on this faculty resources page that includes deeper information about team-based learning, about coaching, sometimes additional information about safety and quality for this fall semester. So we have a lot of other resources on the faculty resources course. And let's see, I'll just sort of give you a quick snapshot of how that looks. So we have a lot of information about logistics, but often what we'll do is we'll provide other resources, grading, coaching, etc. So there's other things in here that you'll be able to explore as we finalize them and publish. So that'll be coming soon, but we wanted to make sure that we first started with this general orientation for you all. Whoops, go back to the beginning. Okay, so with that, what I'd like to do is actually transition to trying out team-based learning. So Mary, are you, and Amisha, are you at a computer where you'd be able to go into Canvas?
I am, yes.
How about you, Mary?
Yes, I can too. Great.
So let's do this. So I'm going to try to sort of orient you to this a little bit. What we're going to do is try out, so you're going to experience like what the students are doing. You're going to try taking the readiness assurance test in Canvas. And that should only take us about 5 minutes to do. And then after that, we're going to together take the team readiness assurance test in Qualtrics, which is the other vehicle that we're using. So let me orient you to that here in Canvas. So if you're in the, I'm going to go to the student view again.
Wendy, without pre-work, I hope you don't judge our scores.
So yeah, so just so you know, the pre-work was if you had gotten a chance to look at the videos and the small things that we sent you in advance, but no judgment at all. Half of this is experiential, and we want to make sure to get you oriented. So it is okay. All right.
So Wendy, Wendy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I just wanted to mention, because you're a test student, you don't see the RATs, but they should. So they should have this with the IRAT and the TRAT.
Okay, actually, sorry. So I'll go to, I'll just show it here then on my view. Yep. So see an IRAT here, which has a little rocket ship taken off. So if you all could go in there, it's going to look a little different because I'm launching it from a slightly different view. But there's some instructions in here, and I'll just mention a couple things. The quiz that we're going to take right now is only going to have 5 questions plus 1 attestation question. Normally, the students have 10 questions and 7 minutes to answer them. And so we have shifted things so that the students are going to be taking the IRATs before they come to class. So essentially, it'll be part of their pre-work. Okay. And then they'll have that done, but they won't know what the answers are. So as you can see, we've got it, there's a time limit on here, the answers are shuffled, and then we just go from there to the TRAT when they come into class. So I'd like to invite you both to just try to take the quiz by clicking on the yellow button here, and it'll give you 5 minutes. And I think it gives a little warning if you're done or if you only have a minute left. So go ahead and start that, and let us know when you're done by maybe putting something in the chat, please.
I'm so sorry. It's Meredith. So I'm in the Canvas, but I missed the part. I got disconnected. How do I get to where this quiz is? So sorry.
I'm muted. Sorry. I'm so glad that you're in, Meredith. So yes. So if you're in Canvas, then
yeah,
you want to go to modules.
Oh, okay.
And then
now I got it.
Yep.
The IRAT.
Correct.
Perfect. Sorry. Thank you so much.
No, it's great. Okay. It looks like Meredith is probably still working on this, but we've got other folks ready. I kind of lost my chat view. And so I'm going to answer your question, Amisha. So yes. Students will take this ahead of time, but they actually should not get their score. So if you saw your score, then that was an error on our part. They should just complete it without seeing how well they did. And that kind of keeps them in suspense, so to speak, before they come to class. So yeah, I think we might have missed a setting on that, but the students won't see their score.
Good to know. Yeah, I saw my score, and I also saw how long it took me, and like this was my first attempt. It was like a little table. So
Yep, and so they will still see how long it took them, and they're only given 1 attempt for this. And in the past, we did this actually in class, but we have decided this fall to have it be part of the pre-work so that it saves us a little bit of time, just because everything's a little harder when you're managing things electronically and asynchronously. So, all right. So let's see, Meredith, are you good?
Yes, I totally am. I didn't do well because I saw my score, but I just zipped through it as quickly as I could. I'm sorry.
No, this is half of this is just giving you a chance to get a sense a little bit of what the students are experiencing. So that's
Yeah, I'm really glad that you guys decided to move it to pre-class because that was like a lot of pressure once I finally got to the right spot.
All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the quiz together as a team. And I'm going to actually use a, also sort of demonstrate another process, which probably you all have experienced before, but it's a breakout room. I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to make a breakout room for all of us, and we're going to go in there. And I'm going to set a time limit on this. So we're going to have 7 minutes together as a team in the breakout room to do the next step, which is the TRAT. And so what we'll do, just because I'm kind of a little bit more oriented to this, I'm going to choose as our group here, I'm going to be the rat master. So I'm going to help to find the TRAT and submit it for the team, okay? But we're going to have 7 minutes to take this together as a team. So first I'm going to open up the room, and you guys need to accept that as going into a breakout room of our Zoom meeting, and then we'll take the quiz there together and come back out. Okay, here we go. All right, so here we are in the breakout room. Something just to know is that sometimes when you come out of a breakout room back into a main room, you end up being muted and you don't remember that. So just the heads up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, team. We're going to take this TRAT together. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to go in here, and there's this link I'm going to open, and this is a Qualtrics survey. So let's see, we're going to be team number 1 today. And I'll enter in my name for our team. And are you guys seeing what I'm doing?
No.
Your screen.
I realize I think I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. I was so excited. Okay, so I went into the TRAT and clicked on the link. It was over here. I clicked on the link. And here we are. I'm filling this out. And I'm going to say that we're going to take this together. We're not going to use course materials. We're not going to cheat. We're not going to share this. So I agree. Okay, so let's do this together. So the team readiness assurance test is important because what do you guys think?
Requires the teams to work together.
Agreed.
Think it's this one, D?
Yes.
All right. So let's go ahead with that. If we get it right, we'll move on to the next question. Yep, great, we got that right. So most students, before they start team-based learning, will have had a group learning experience in which they felt their group members contributed equally, somebody had to carry the load, the instructor could tell which group was most productive, or they could spot a weaker student and help them out. What do you guys think?
B.
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 B as in boy here?
Yes.
Yep.
We got some consensus, it sounds like. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that was correct, so because we're moving on. Okay, we're going to have to get one wrong at least a couple times so you can see this, but we're ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, it is important to have teams simultaneously report decisions because what do you think?
The right answer is D, so we could get a wrong answer on purpose if we want.
I'll pick B then.
Yeah, how about me?
Go
All right,
with
B.
B.
I support B.
All right, let's see what we do. Oh, we're back on question 3 again. So it'll repeat like that. So it'll just come back, okay?
And that's how it'll show up for the students too? Is that, okay.
Correct. And so then we're saying that we think D is the correct answer. We'll go ahead and select that now. And then, great, we moved on to question 4, so we got that correct. Okay, so that's how that looks. Now this actually is a tough question, so I want you all to tell me what you think about the answer here. What 2 factors together enable the most reticent students in class to become more engaged?
Well, I think that team staying together long-term was kind of the thing that I was thinking would be the most beneficial for these students. So I narrowed my answer. I would narrow our answers down between A and B. What do you guys think?
I agree with that. But I didn't like A because I don't think you should assign something to a student who's reticent.
Agreed. Yeah, so B would be my goal.
And I honestly didn't know if grade depends on team productivity.
Yeah.
Meredith, what do you think?
I agree. I actually kind of liked the simultaneous reporting part, but it's cool. If I could make up an answer, I would do that.
Well,
But I agree. I think teams staying together long term, and I also agree. I don't know who said about not assigning a position, so I would go with B based on process of elimination.
Yeah.
mm-hmm. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead with B then? See where we're at with that. And that is correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now I want to just, I know that we could probably get this answer. So let's talk through it, but we'll get it wrong purposely just to show how many times you can actually do that. Okay. So what is the most likely outcome if a course prioritizes the individual work, the IRAT scores, over the teamwork, the TRAT scores, and application exercise performance?
In the interest of getting things maybe purposely wrong, I would really be relieved if all my grades didn't depend on teamwork. I strongly support A. I mean, gosh.
I'll pick A as well.
All right. Yeah, that would just be great. Oh,
but it's wrong.
Okay, guys, we're definitely going to learn more, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, as an individual?
Yes. Yeah, better than teams, for sure.
Should we go with B?
Yeah.
I think the right answer is D.
I think you're probably correct too. So, but just so you know, we could go through each of these, and I'm going to do it. So it's okay because our score doesn't really matter.
So there's no penalty for picking all of them.
Yep, and even get down to the last one. Okay. Now, it's true actually that if a team selects the same one incorrectly more than one time, they still will, it'll still diminish their attempts numbers. You can only attempt it 4 times. So they could still get it wrong, but the reality is the score is 0 anyway if you have to take 4 tries. So
it kind of simulates that like scratch ticket approach that we have in person.
Exactly. So this is our solution. Many thanks to Reese and Allie for coming up with a way that we can actually simulate having the repeat testing time. Uh-oh. So it looks like we're going to leave our room, and I was kind of stalling for this purpose. We only have 60 seconds left. So I'm going to go ahead and click this here. And then I'm going to show you something that's going to probably freak all of our students out, but we can't help, there's nothing we can do to help it with it, which is that it's telling us that we've got 54 percentage. And that is just an incorrect percentile because the 66 here is also incorrect. We got a 36 out of 50. Okay. So it's only this numerator that's of relevance to the students. Okay. So and this is huge and we can't take it away. So we're just stuck. if they wanted to, they can go down and actually see how many attempts they took and what points they got for each question. So it's a little bit complicated, and I don't think we have to spend time looking at this, and we'll probably be bumped out of the room anyway. But if they want to, they can go and look on this. But ultimately, what we ask the teams to do. So now we've all been muted again as we come back into the breakout room, or out of the breakout room. And you saw how it just automatically pulled everybody out. So that's one of the ways that we're doing to make sure that the TRAT's not taking longer than it should. Okay. So that's our process there. I was in the middle of describing things, but I think I'll just pause to see if people have any questions about it.
So sorry.
Wendy,
Oh, just
no, go ahead, Meredith.
The goal is to explain to students though that whatever score they see there is only the numerator matters, and their score is not actually whatever percentage it is that it says is there. Correct?
Correct. Yep. And as I, you know, we have this little reminder in here, only pay attention to the numerator, da 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 da, and we will let the students know this in advance. But there might be some confusion the first week.
And I noticed that you, you know, you were our rap master, quote unquote. Can we use that term? Are we using that term? Okay, good, perfect. So when will the students kind of informally decide that right before they go into the breakout room, or like, is it going to be? And do we encourage a new person to be rap master every time, or how does that work?
Great question. Yeah, the teams are used to alternating roles from their spring semester. So most, you know, these students are going to be pretty quick to say, I'll be rap master. Somebody will select real fast. What I'm imagining, and what we have in a document that that we'll share with you as well, is that like it's worthwhile for the faculty to say, all right, now we're going to go into the, you know, we're going to move into TRAT. Remember, teams, someone has to decide who's going to be their rap master. And so that's, if they haven't already thought about it in advance, they're thinking about it. And so essentially it's reminding them of that before they go in. The TRAT takes 10 minutes. And then as you noticed, the breakout room notice, which comes super fast and it's short, it just says there's 60 seconds left in the breakout room, but that gives them an extra minute. And we decided that that would help if they needed that to confirm who's going to be doing the rap master job. Did that answer?
Wendy?
Yep.
Do you mind just scrolling down a little? I wanted to point out that the correct answers are in green, and the ones that we miss score as red, just for our knowledge, so that as faculty we can alert students to that. And then, as she said, the denominator doesn't matter, but the nominator on each of those questions basically was how they totaled our score to get the 36 or 38, whatever we ended up with.
Yeah, and because we only had 5 questions here, the scoring's a little bit off. Normally each point, you know, full credit is 5, but we doubled it to be 10 so that we could get up to a 50 score. But as you could see then, like if we had answered question number 5 correctly the first time, we would have gotten 10 out of 10. Or if we had answered it correctly the second time, we would have gotten 6 out of 10, even though it's a 6, or 4. But once we got to the last try, we're getting 0. So they don't have to calculate it. Well, like when they did the scratch off cards with the traditional approach in person, they had to calculate that up. But the system does it for us, which is great. It just looks deceiving. And it's just this little 36 over here that they have to pay attention to. So any other questions about that part? Okay. So let me actually share and show you the RAT process document here that you'll get. We'll be posting it to Canvas as well. So this is what we've come up with as a, bye Mary, thank you. This is what we've come up with as sort of a, oh, this is the wrong one, sorry.
Wendy, it is in Canvas if that's any easier.
Sure. I think we'll go there so I can show you where you'll find it. Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is.
I put it there as a file.
So make this bigger. And so what we just went through is, there'll be a couple minutes to introduce students, remind them to edit their screen names with their team number and program, just so that we have can sort of easily identify who's who and in what team. And then what we just went through was this part. I didn't really verbalize much of this, but reminding students that the TRAT's a test, that they can't use other materials, informing they'll have 10 minutes in their breakout rooms, but they can return earlier if they finish early. Instruct the teams to have the RAT master locate the quiz. That's the Qualtrics link. And then when they come back, they're going to need to do this other thing, which we haven't done yet, which is posting the team score and any question numbers that they struggled with when they return to the main room. So let me actually show you what that would look like in our chat. It's just simply, we would say team 1, we got 36, and it was question number, I think it was 2 and 5 that we had trouble with. And that way, as a facilitator, you can look at the room and say, oh, okay, well, here's all the teams, and here's how they did, and here's the items that we might need to talk about more. We don't have a lot of time allocated to talking about the RATs. And to be honest, most of the teams do very well. Typically, there's reasonable participation in terms of students actually doing the pre-work in advance. And so out of the whole team, we definitely have folks that know what's going on, and then and that way you're able to gauge it. So like Michelle just posted for team 2, thank you, Michelle. And so then I'd say, oh, question number 2 was a problem for several of the teams. And so therefore I might say, all right, it looks like question number 2 was a little bit challenging. Team 1, tell us about what were some of the conversations you had about this. And so somebody from team 1 would speak up and say blah, blah, blah. And if you needed more information, you could go to team 2. And then you could say, okay, team 3, it seems like you got this correct. What was some of your reasoning behind choosing the correct answer for question number 2? So essentially trying to engage the teams in expressing what they were confused about and having the teams answer each other if possible. If there's confusion still remaining, then it's something that you would be able to help to clarify. But we first always go in team-based learning to have the teams try to learn for themselves.
Sorry, where can we find a copy? Like once we're out of the TRAT, where do we find what those questions were?
These ones here that I just, that I have posted.
Sorry, I mean like when they post like, oh yeah, team 1 had a problem with number 2, team 2 had a problem with number 2, like me trying to help facilitate a little bit so I know which question we're talking about. Where do I find it?
Great. So yeah, so this is it's a perfect question. Thank you for asking that, because essentially as a faculty member, one of the jobs that you'll have to do is to balance, watching the chat to come up with something, and then also be ready to respond and to know what that question was, right? So the questions can be found in your facilitator guide. The other place that's probably, yeah, that's probably the best place, right, Michelle?
Right, yeah.
Because we used to, have paper copies that you would be able to reference, but I think you'll just go to the facilitator guide. So you wouldn't necessarily want to, you could share your screen if you wanted to, but you could also just have it up on the screen for yourself to view and say, okay, question number 2, that was the one about blah, blah, blah. And that's because at this point, everyone will have finished the TRAT in Qualtrics. So, it's actually, now that I say that, maybe you could still have Qualtrics open. What do you think, Michelle?
I think that might be a problem because we're not actually taking it. I mean, we as faculty would have to take it.
Right.
Right. And
can I also just ask, sorry, just thinking ahead, trying to be prepared. So do you anticipate that there will be any sort of issues with, like, how will the students, if they're taking this before coming in, right? Like, and you guys used to do it at the start of class, but now they're doing it pre-class, then are they, do you foresee any issues with them, like remembering which questions they got wrong, or like having, being able to remember even which questions, like what the questions were, that they needed some assistance with? Or I'm just trying to anticipate conversation around it.
Yeah, so I imagine that the students are going to remember that they might have been confused about something, or remember that they were sure about something when they see the TRAT again. Because unlike the fact that, you saw your score, so you had some sort of gauge on how you did, but the way it will be set up for the students is that they won't see their score. So they'll take it, it'll just disappear.
Right.
And there may be some students that say, oh my gosh, there was something about, I don't know, errors, and I don't remember what, a latent error is. So I'm going to go back and look at the pre-work on this. Now, in the past, they wouldn't be able to do that between the IRAT and the TRAT, and, that's not allowed. But now they probably have the time and the wherewithal to do it, and that is fine. We're exploring being okay with that. So, but when they come to the TRAT, they are going to have to just bring their own knowledge to that discussion again. There'll be some time in between, obviously, when they take it and when the team is taking it. So it'll be sort of de novo, that they may or may not remember everything about how they performed and what they answered, but they can think through it again with their team.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
And Meredith, I don't know if this helps, but just from my experience last year when I taught the course in person, I remember that when I did the pre-work, I printed out the faculty guide and kind of had it ready, and it helped me have good conversations with them like throughout the time. So I would probably, in the interest of not killing trees, we could do it like on an iPad or a second device, but I felt like it was so helpful to have that tangible paper that I could take notes on. So
yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, thank you, Amisha. I was going to mention that as well, that it's going to be kind of personal preference if you want to imprint or if you want to have a second screen up or a second device. There's going to be a lot going on in terms of staring at a screen and sharing it and monitoring chat and participants. So it's probably going to be nice to have a printed version that you're not confusing with everything else you're doing.
And Michelle, I believe our plan right now is for the TRAT in Qualtrics to, like, we can't set a time limit in there. We can only use the breakout room function. But as you can see, I still have access to it now. So as a student, the teams might be able to say, well, yeah, I can still see question number 2 that we struggled with.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
But at a certain point, we are actually shutting off the TRAT, so it's not there in perpetuity for students to access and see.
So that actually leads me to another question that I just thought of, Wendy, is so the Qualtrics, I know that the breakout room pulled us out, but the Wrap Master would have to hit submit at that same time, or can they leave it open, or does it auto shut down after 10 minutes?
It doesn't auto shut down, and that's sort of what I'm showing you here is that,
Okay.
you know, we submitted after you answer the last question, it is submitted, and then you just see all your answers here. And this screen is still available to me, but my recollection is that I think our plan has been that like at, I don't know, 3:30 or something like that, Michelle?
Yeah.
Yes. We're just shutting down all the Qualtrics surveys. So, and I think we do that manually. But anyway, that's our way of like making it go away after that part of the session.
So what I'm, and I'm sorry if I'm confused, but like, so, okay, if I'm the TRAT or the Wrap Master and I fill out the Qualtrics survey, and let's say we got into a lot of discussion, so we only get through like, you know, maybe we have 2 questions left. Theoretically, the breakout room could pull me out, but I could still say, all right, I'm just going to put in the 2 answers that I think are right, to make sure that our team gets quote unquote credit, right?
You're correct. That's a loophole that we haven't closed.
That's okay. Just so that we're aware of it. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, I think there's sort of limitations to all of the options we had around like trying to simulate the scratch off card in, you know, in this kind of a setting. And so that, but I hadn't actually thought about that one yet. So I'm glad you are, brought it up to our attention. It would be good to see. We, you know, we recognize that we need to do a, as good a job as we can to decrease things that would impact the integrity of the exam, but know that there's ways around it. So,
I mean, I think that the move to what happened with COVID and us moving to more remote learning has really, I mean, I think it's an opportunity for us to really rely on the academic honor code, and I'm really hoping, I really think the students will rise to the occasion with that. I mean, from my experience, I think they're generally,
Yep.
The other thing I want to mention is that they might have to, you know, answer the last couple of questions on their own, but they're going to have to submit it to get a score.
Okay.
So I don't think they can just keep it open and think, oh, I'll just go back to it after the discussion. I do think they'll recognize that they have to do that, that they have to submit it.
Yeah. Well, we already did that.
Sorry, can I ask one more question? I know everyone already knows the answer to this except for me, and I apologize. But when do we get the facilitator guide? Like, is it before each session? Is it on Canvas? Where do I print that from?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to the faculty resources course, and so this is going to be where you'll see it. And so I'm going to see if I can go down to, this is,
it's okay that I don't have all these things yet, right?
Absolutely. Right. They're not published for you yet.
I was like, maybe I'm doing this wrong because I don't see any of this stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to just show you an example of what a fully fleshed out module looks like. So the course doesn't start until the pre-work launches September 2nd. So we've got a little ways to go still.
Yeah, there's no pressure, guys. I just thought, I was like, man, I really missed an email somewhere. Something is off. I don't know.
Yeah, so you will get an email that will say, you know, sessions available. And typically we send those out on Thursday before the next session, okay? Which is the next session when they're face-to-face, or synchronous is on the following Wednesday. So essentially a week in advance. And it'll tell you to go to the faculty resources course, and it will say, okay, make sure to read, and then you'll get a module like this by session. And it'll say things like review the pre-work in the iPad course. And so then you can click through here, and you're going to be enrolled as a student in this faculty resources course, but you'll be enrolled as a guest facilitator in the students course. okay? So we put the pre-work all is in the student course, so don't get too alarmed here, but here's session 1, and then the pre-work is here. And so you would go through and read the pre-work that's on this page, and they often include some video clips and things like that. So your first step will be to go look at the pre-work. And then after you do the pre-work, now I'm just sort of backing out here to get back to the faculty resources course. We'll ask you to review the guide, and then the guide will be posted as a PDF, so you can download it. And we usually have a 1-page overview, which sort of just says, here's what the different parts of the session are. And it's the same thing. It covers learning objectives, the intro, the RATs, application exercises, and teams briefs and debriefs. So you'll get familiar with that. And they are kind of lengthy. That's why I was saying it'll take a little bit of time to go through, but it's because we provide all the specifics. We're like, here's the pre-work again, but there's no links here. It's just sort of reminding. And then everything from pull out the team kits, here's what to say. There's just a lot of detail. But as a new facilitator, and Amisha, I think you know this from before, a lot of it is similar content, and it's just we sometimes have subs, and because we have new people, we just need to lay it all out. So all the specifics will be available in the faculty guide a week prior to the session to summarize.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And we have a discussion board in the faculty resources course, so that if you have questions that come up, you can post them there, and then we'll respond to them to everybody. So, yeah. Okay.
One other thing we might want to mention with the faculty guide is that some of the items are what the students see, and they'll be in a box versus, all the behind the scenes items that we would want to direct the faculty to as an audience. So that's the other reason it's kind of lengthy, because we're giving you both.
Yeah, exactly. Like this box with the pre-work, that anything that's in a box is what's on Canvas for the students to see. So it's sort of duplicated, but that way as a faculty, you've got it all in one place to be able to look at it. Like this is another box of instructions for the students, for example. So instructions for you, instructions for the students. And, as, Mary was asking earlier, she's like, we've got all these different sections, and how do we keep things the same across the different, course rooms and such. And that's why we have all these details. And like, it says things like read purpose aloud. Well, that's probably self-explanatory, but, and display the instructions, but it just helps us to be able to provide some resources about the specifics. Okay. How are you guys doing? Doing all right?
Good.
Okay. So I'm going to transition to sort of the last section that we have, which has to do with coaching, because we spent some time talking about team-based learning and how we're enacting that through the RAT process. And I mentioned that one of the main roles that we have for faculty is to help to coach teams. What we discovered over the years is that, a good number of our teams of students does a great job. But sometimes teams just have it rough. And they might have some students that are less engaged. They may have some students that might be more assertive. They might have students that are not prepared, or students that might believe that they have all the answers to everything. So teams operate in different ways, and we figured out that over time, we really needed the faculty to help coach the teams. And even the teams that are functioning well, we realized that we can help them get even better, and that's what coaches do. So we've really embraced this coaching framework. Now, there are times when there's issues, and so this is something that we've been using over the past couple years now, which is different options for addressing challenging behaviors in teams. And the reason why we have this as a guide is that as the teams are working together over time, and you're guys going to be joining teams that have already formed and are, for the most part, completely consistent from the spring. So they already know how to work together, which is terrific. And so sometimes when things happen in teams and you're going to see them over time, maybe you don't have to actually address it right off the bat, because ultimately if the teams are learning how to do this work together, half of that is to be able to figure out how to self-correct. Of course, they need guidance, they need to know what the expectations are. But if team members can figure out how to bring up their challenges and address them amongst their team, then that is terrific. So that is sort of a long way of just saying it's okay to ignore some things. So maybe we're seeing something that just doesn't seem quite right, a student that's maybe not quite as engaged, as an example. And it might be okay to ignore it for a session or two, but then if that still continues and the team hasn't made any self-corrections, then maybe it's something that you would want to confront and say something directly to the team or individuals in the moment. And then finally, the last option here is to process, is to really engage the team in reflecting about what's going on and say, how's your team doing? What's the participation levels like? How are you addressing things? And guiding them through actually identifying the issues and making some plans for improvement. So that's our sort of frame that we want to introduce to you. And I think that, based on that frame, we've kind of come up with this recipe for addressing challenges. So the first is whenever something happens in a room, to stop and say, okay, what's going on? What is actually difficult here? Is there language issues that are difficult? Is there content issues that are difficult? Is there interpersonal interactions that are difficult? Is it an issue amongst the team members? Is it an issue with me and a team member? What is going on? And then always taking a self pulse of like, how is it making you feel? What are your perhaps gut reactions to things that might drive your behavior? And then to bring it up to sort of the more cognitive level of saying, well, then how do I really want to respond to this, regardless of how I'm feeling? Is this something that I should ignore, confront, or process? And then thinking through how you're going to actually do that in the setting of the course. Now, in the face-to-face course, there's a little bit more, it's challenging, but there's a little bit more ease of actually connecting. So you could just walk over to a team and sort of stand next to somebody and say, hey, I don't think you're working, please stop shopping on eBay or something like that. But in this asynchronous environment, we're not going to have that same oversight. So some of this is definitely going to be different. I don't claim to have all the answers for this at all, but I just know that it will be different. So with that being said, I have a couple of scenarios which are in my notes. So let me go here. I was going to cut and paste them into the chat, but maybe we can just look at them here. Can you guys see that okay? Is it big enough?
I can see them, yeah.
Okay, great. So let's just chat through this first ones here. So teams in your room are having great discussions during their application exercises, but they're not really moving on to the next piece. What do you do? How do you address that as a faculty member? What are some of the thoughts that you all have when you hear that scenario?
I guess, are they in breakout rooms when they're doing this portion? I was recently in a online training session and they magically did this thing in Zoom where in the breakout session, little messages would pop up from the facilitators and they'd be like, if you haven't moved on to the next question, you should do so now. And it was a great, there are many tricks to Zoom that I still need to figure out, but that was an awesome one because it was a great reminder to be like, oh yeah, we are halfway through our time. We weren't paying attention. And there was also something with like a clock
that appeared and showed you sort of how much time overall, not just the final 60-second reminder, but there was like a countdown clock about how much time you had left. And that was also really a nice reminder for the group.
Oh, that's great. I don't think I've seen a countdown clock piece before. Was that something that was a Zoom feature, or was it?
That is beyond my knowledge base of Zoom. I apologize.
Oh,
I just know that they were amazing, and I was like, yes, teach me all your tricks, HR.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen an actual clock, but I know in the top right-hand corner, like when we were doing the T route, it was showing how much time was left.
Oh, great. Good observation, Allie. That might be something we want to point out to everybody.
Right.
Wendy, I do think we can set to like a reminder that's not just the 60 seconds thing. I think there's, when you were sending us to the breakout rooms, there's variations. We could do a 2-minute warning, etc.
Yep. So this is, you know, different ways of essentially confronting the situation. You know, I think in the face-to-face classroom, sometimes you can ignore this, and when it's time for the report out, they're not ready. And so they have kind of a crummy report out. And it's okay for them to figure out, oh my gosh, we were not paying attention to time. Our team needs a better job like keeping time. So I think there's a balance between letting teams discover what their skills need to be, and then also sometimes just redirecting and keeping people on task. Which I think, again, we'll have to be thoughtful about. Everyone needs probably just a little more help right now since we're using new structures and formats. Yeah. Great. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I do want to. I was going to just add that the tools are going to shape how we handle some of these things now as far as Zoom. But anytime you can bring it back to teaming characteristics, if they are reporting out and you can tell they weren't really well prepared, asking them if they had a timekeeper, asking them if, you know, what got in the way of them coming up with a cohesive answer, things like that can kind of assist the process for future.
Great. And I could say about this, like this situation, this usually makes me feel anxious because I'm sort of like, oh my gosh, I have to do something because they're not on task. And they're going to miss it and be confused. And so sometimes I have to decide to bottle that for a little bit and then make a decision about what's the best approach overall. Okay, let's go into the next one. So you notice that a student's reluctant to participate or not engaged on a team. So I've been alluding to that as a possibility. And I guess in this way, it might be somebody who perhaps doesn't have their, they might not have their video on in the breakout rooms, and we'll be asking them to have their video on so they can see each other. Maybe it's somebody who, you know, is like, like this, looking off screen, typing or not seeming to be engaged. And so those are things that you might notice in our newer environment. So what would you do as a faculty for that?
I think my initial kind of gut feeling, which again, I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but the gut feeling that I would have is almost, especially if it's the first time I'm noticing this, would definitely be to ignore. And I think that's because I think if it happens repeatedly, I would think that the teams would be able to kind of prompt a conversation amongst themselves, or maybe they would approach me separately to help facilitate that conversation. But especially in the world of like Zoom and everything happening, like I just try to lead with a lot of grace because you don't know what's happening, you know, and I almost feel worried about if I jump straight to confrontation, what kind of a like how will that impact that student's wellness if there is something that I'm not privy to. So just a thought.
Great.
I agree. I feel like it's also so challenging to know, like, is it the technology? Is it the person? you know, and I mean, things are just complicated right now, you know, I don't know. I just found out that my kid doesn't actually get to go to school in person. That's hard, right? I mean, who knows what's going on in the background that I can't see behind their computer screen? So I feel like, yes, giving a lot of grace and understanding. I agree a million times, Amisha. Like, just trying to meet people where they are and give them a chance to figure things out and what's going to work best. And also understanding that that is probably going to change Wednesday to Wednesday. And so, you know, having that empathy for everybody, myself included, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how you guys mentioned that we don't really know, and it could be anything from they have laryngitis to you know, to that they're not prepared, or that, you know, anything. It could be a personal factor, a family issue. We have no idea. It could be they're very introverted. So, or they're on a borrowed computer and they, you know, are worried about other things happening in their space. So, I think that the ways that we would confront this are also different. So in the past, we might, like in a classroom setting, say, hey, I'd like to just chat with you for a second. Can you stay after class, or something like that? Or you can just wander over and say, everything okay? Something like that. Now, we don't really have the luxury of doing that, but you could send somebody a private chat message. You could also send an email to check in with a student afterwards, send them a message through Canvas in their inbox there if you felt like there was an ongoing issue that you wanted to check in on. So there are vehicles still, just they're a little different.
One thing that worked really well for me last year when we were in person, which now I'm realizing I'm going to have to reframe a lot of this to the world of Zoom, but I noticed that sometimes students wouldn't really engage or participate in the conversation because there are certain students who, you know, tend to speak more. And what was really cool is, like, you know, the dental students usually wore blue scrubs, like there would be like decals on their water bottles. So even if it was my first or second time, like I knew the profession that the student belonged to. So a really easy way to invite somebody into a conversation would be like, while I would walk around to the different groups, I would be like, that's really interesting. I wonder what the physical therapy aspect of this is, or like, how would you look at this from a dental perspective? Does that impact your guys' care? And to ask kind of prompting questions like that would almost be like an invitation. It worked like a charm, but now I'm realizing I don't know how to do that on Zoom, or it might be more difficult.
Well, you know, one of the things we're asking the students to do is to identify their team number as well as their program. And so you're right, you know, people aren't probably going to be wearing the blue scrubs quite as, you know, so that we won't get that visual cue, and we don't have our lanyards in case that was helpful. But hopefully they'll put that into their Zoom screen name. And then I think it'd be possible to ask the question to the chat box, or even verbally say, let's hear from some nursing perspective here. And so inviting that in a different way.
And you'll have a roster available to you too. So if you pop into Team 2's room or whatever, you can look at that and see who's in the, like, which professions are in that room. So you could bring that up if you wanted to. Because I know on these small videos, it's, if somebody's got a really long name, you can't really see what their profession is. So that would be another way to kind of help with that too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we can pop in and out of the breakout rooms, right? As the facilitator, is that?
Yep, okay. That's one of the reasons why the facilitator guide is still coming to you, is that we are continuing to work on the language around how to describe this. But yeah, like what's happening in today's session is I'm the host and Michelle is the co-host. And as the host, I'm sort of like the session moderator right now, in that I open the breakout rooms and can close them. I can push people into breakout rooms. So if Michelle wanted to say go into a different breakout room, then I would push her there. So between the two faculty that we intend to have sort of in any one of the Zoom calls, there'll be somebody who can help with making sure that that happens. So that way you can sort of pop into the different breakout rooms for a couple minutes at a time.
Okay.
Sorry, quick question. So I'm assuming we're going to talk more about this at orientation, right? About like how to, yeah. Because I just imagine like if I'm the co-host and I pop out of a breakout room and then my co-host or my host is in a breakout room, I can't push myself. So I'm just like hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think our plan is that the host will mostly stay in the main room to be able to allow the co-host to go into the other. And you can always share the co-host and host role. You can flip that back and forth between people if you need to. But I think our best practice is going to be that the host always stays into the main room.
Good to know.
Well, the co-host should be, once the breakout rooms are open, the co-host and the host should both be able to go into different breakout rooms as they please.
Okay.
They just have to be open for the co-host to be able to, but when the
Right.
students are in the rooms, then it's open technically. So since it's like that, yeah, then the co-host should be able to have that breakout room button and be able to choose which room they want to go into.
That's super helpful. I've never seen it as a co-host, only as a host. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Allie. As you can tell, we're still, it's like getting a shared mental model on this has been challenging. So
Yes. Yeah, no problem.
that's what we need. Okay, so let's go on to the next couple of questions. I think this one's pretty similar in terms of some teams are getting content quickly and taking it seriously, but others are not. How do you handle this? This is sort of the idea of like, you're like bouncing in and out of the breakout rooms, and you know, some are like doing great and other teams are sort of still reading the instructions or miss stuff in the instructions still. So what do you do as a faculty member to help balance that out? What ideas do you have? You have some
Again,
thoughts?
I think it's really tricky, like in this, you know, completely virtual. I mean, I don't know. It seems hard to me when I think about like jumping in and out of these Zoom rooms, you know, and sometimes you just catch people at a moment where like no one's talking. But like when you're in a classroom and you can see everyone doing all this stuff, you know, it's a really different situation. I guess I don't know. I guess I feel like I could see technology almost hindering or like making this more of an issue in some ways than it would if you were live and in person. But I guess you know, asking some leading questions in terms of refocusing people, like, what have you guys talked about so far? Like, what is it that you're stuck on now? You know, where are you guys, what are you looking back to from the pre-materials that, you know, could help you with this conversation or with this talking point or question or whatever it is that we're focusing on right then. But yeah, it all seems very challenging now that we're talking about these things with real life examples.
I completely agree with like how I feel like technology might hinder this one. My gut goes to probably just ignoring it and seeing how the report outs are, and maybe like I just caught them during a lull, and then if that happens repeatedly, the other experience that I have is if they're really off, like if they're reading their instructions and they're just like, we do not understand, they're almost like looking for a faculty member who will come and so I feel like if I dropped into a breakout room, they were completely lost, they would immediately be like, oh, Dr. Singh, okay, I don't understand this, can you help us? But if they don't reach out for me that way, I feel like there's probably just a lull. But that's gut feeling.
That's a great point. And there's actually a technology piece that can help a little bit with this, in that there's a feature when you're in the breakout room that's called raise hand. And it doesn't allow you to chat to the faculty or the folks in the main room, but it shows that they want some help in that breakout room. And so that would be not any different than being in a classroom where they're like, hey, we're totally confused. So I think that we still have some options there. But I would agree with you. I think this is going to be new for the students in terms of doing TBL and team-based learning in this environment too. So I think it's okay that we'll give them some time to figure it out if we ignore some things like that. The current schedule is such that we're going to have 2 synchronous sessions and then several asynchronous sessions, and then some other synchronous sessions at the end. So they'll get their sort of sea legs a little bit after the first session, I think. Synchronous sea legs.
I think the hardest part about Zoom is just, I mean, we're very used to conversing with other people in person. And so this idea of like, okay, you're waiting for the other person to stop talking, then you're unmuting yourself, and then you're pitching in, and then multiple people unmute themselves. And it's just this very different dynamic. And I have challenges. I mean, just conversing, I'm always feeling like I'm interrupting people or that kind of a thing. So I'm assuming the students are going to struggle with the same stuff.
That I recognized is that it was actually helpful for me to have to unmute myself because I talk a lot. And so if I mute myself more often, then it's another half a second or whatever to get to the functionality of unmuting. And then that allows other people to talk. I don't know if you noticed today that I was trying to do transition statements like, okay, thanks, Amisha. What about you, Meredith? But Meredith, you were already ready to talk, so I didn't need to say that. so there is some sequencing that is different. Yeah. Okay, so how about this final one here? You overhear a student being negative about the value or content of the course. So this goes to being an IPE promoter. Now, how do you overhear this? Now, this might be different. Maybe somebody sends a private chat by mistake to the whole room. Or you get an email from somebody later saying that they think that this is just, what are we actually doing? They don't understand it. What do you do as a faculty member?
My personal opinion about this is, I mean, I go pretty much straight to confronting it and then processing it as a group. I think that they're spending, a chunk of their time investing in this course. And I think personally, it would be a huge travesty for me if they spent all this time and didn't see the value of it. And I love the fact that I can speak to this course and its value, not only from a faculty perspective, but as an ex-student and alumni perspective. So what I have done in the past, which honestly it doesn't happen too often, but the time that I can think of, I either kind of pause the conversation and just really facilitate a conversation of why I found value in this and really talk about how we can create value together. And I almost feel like it's valuable to at the end when the debrief is happening, just be like, hey, I heard this and I'm wondering how you guys feel about how this material or what we covered today applies to your professions. Do you guys feel like it's valuable? This is a safe space. Please, let's just share. And that way it gives somebody an opportunity to say, well, they didn't really talk about, dentistry, for example. And then I can say, yeah, but in real life, this is how it applies, and just have a conversation. That's how I would handle it.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always easy and challenging in these kinds of things where you have people coming from a million different perspectives, whether it's the nursing perspective or the dentistry perspective or the medical students, it's a challenge. And I think seeing how it's going to be in real life is sometimes hard, and I think one of the most valuable parts of this whole prospect, right, is that we're all so interdisciplinary. And yet when I think back to when I was in school, it was like nothing about your training was interdisciplinary. I mean, at least for me, you know, and to appreciate how interdisciplinary our work lives are is sometimes really hard when you're on the student side and you haven't had that experience yet. And so I think that, you know, to call it out, like Amisha was saying, and just say like, yeah, I know it doesn't sound like this might be relevant, but let's talk about what these other perspectives are and how that might not actually be the case in real life. So I think that that's a really valuable conversation to have as well. And just to also be able to share the perspective on the other side of like, yeah, when you're out of training and you're actually working, like, whew, it's amazing how, you know, how many different perspectives you need to simply discharge a patient. Like, whew, you have no idea. It's not just about how much their pneumonia has improved, you know, or whatever the case may be, right? But it's hard. And I think that conversation is really valuable to have, and just to call it out and talk about it.
Great. Okay, well, that was our nice little Zoom fishbowl with the idea of, you know, having a question and people think about the answers together. A little different than a typical live fishbowl would be. So really just to start to wrap things up, this is some of our reminders. If there's any changes in your schedule at all, please, please, please let RECE know as soon as possible. Because it makes a difference in terms of how we're able to pair people up and to make sure that the rooms are covered. We're pretty tight this year, and it looks like most people have good availability for participating. But we know that absences happen, and so we try to do our best to help with that. We have another training for Zoom in particular. And in fact, you guys today helped us to, I think, figure out some of the topics and issues that we probably need to address with the faculty at large. So that's going to be on the 19th. That came as one of the many calendar invites. And then the course orientation itself was going to be on September 2nd. And there'll be some information to look at ahead of time, going over some of the changes and updates that we've kind of talked through some of them today. So you guys have a little bit of a leg up on that. We want to make sure that when we publish more content in Canvas that you're looking at that and that you create a profile or a bio in Canvas that describes some information about yourself and your interests in IPE. So that will be something that students will be able to access and see, and your co-facilitators too. I'm sure there's going to be questions coming. I just wanted to sort of orient to who helps to answer what stuff. Ultimately, when everything's up and running, Canvas is really our main source of information, but RECE definitely can help you clarify things, or if you notice any errors, she and Allie will get right on it. You guys seem to be familiar with Canvas, and so that's great. But if you start having any problems with access and such, RECE is still your contact. The content Michelle oversees and owns pretty much. So if you have questions about the content and the structure of how things are in Canvas, that's Michelle, and she's also helping obviously with some of our Zoom pieces along with RECE and Allie. Any student concerns, things that come up, absences or what have you, you can get in touch with RECE as a start. And if there are things about learning about what we're doing and needing to understand, you know, getting more information for your own benefit, I'm the main person. Amisha, you're asking about, is the Zoom training mandatory? We're definitely going to record it because we know we kind of sprung that on everybody. We just realized that there's so much that's different that we need to give people an opportunity to practice with running breakout rooms and things like that if they haven't had that. So we are, you know, we're requiring it, but obviously if people can't make it, we've got the recording for you to be able to review. And I'm hoping that after that point, you know, if there are people that have extra questions, that they can start to work with their co-facilitators and sort of figure out, you know, if there's some knowledge gaps or things that they might want to be people might have different areas of facilitation that they are their strengths that they might want to negotiate with their co-facilitator. So hopefully with our training, our availability, and then also working together with another faculty member, we'll cover everybody's needs. Misha, you're also asking about the patient advocate. So that's one of the sessions that, because we wanted to try having more asynchronous sessions, that's one of the sessions that's going to be asynchronous. So we're not going to have them live be a part of the sessions like they have in the past. I think it's, I'm sad about that, but I'm hopeful that we'll still have their voices. One of my ideas was to ask them to help, it was always a little bit of inconsistency across the rooms because different patient advocates had different experiences and they only got to be in 1 or 2 rooms mostly. So I'm hoping to gather some of their stories and that could be another resource for students and faculty to access. But we won't be able to have them live. It's just difficult to arrange it from a, when we've tried it online asynchronous, it didn't really work. So it's just difficult to have all their wonderful volunteerness happen when it's not in a specific time frame. Yeah. So other questions as we wrap things up, or Michelle, any other things you've thought about that we need to mention?
Sorry, too many devices. I do want to let you know that I am managing the content, but if you see any errors like spelling errors or posting the wrong thing or anything like that, please reach out to me and we can hopefully rectify things before students see them. So just want to put that out there.
Absolutely. Nothing like a typo for 800 people to see. And then the evaluations are like, there's typos all over the place. Like, typos. We'd love to fix it if we can. Yeah. How about you, Allie? Any thoughts? I'm sure we'll have to kind of, regroup and, anything to mention to this cohort right now?
Nope. I mean, most of my piece will be next week, probably where I'm most knowledgeable. So hopefully we'll get some good pieces and make it a little easier for everybody to kind of be on the same page.
Great.
Can I just ask really quickly for my own knowledge, do we always have the same co-facilitator since we're online and doing these synchronous and asynchronous sessions, or will we be with different people? I'm just not quite sure.
Yep.
Having done this before.
Yeah, no, we haven't shared any of that with you. I'm sorry. So it's coming.
No worries.
So our plan is that everybody is working with a co-facilitator and you'll be with them through all the sessions. And so for the synchronous Zoom sessions, you'll work with them for that. For the asynchronous sessions, which we haven't talked at all about today, but essentially the teams are mostly going to be doing the work on their own, but you as faculty are going to be going in through Canvas and checking in on several things during that week. Not a ton, but just doing some touch points and then rating their products, providing them feedback on what they submit. So you'll be working with your same co-facilitator to negotiate, who's doing what part and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions for now? Well, you all have been just awesome. I really am so grateful for your time and interest and enthusiasm and great suggestions and ideas about this because there's a lot of work that we're putting into it, but it's because we want it to work well and we need your help. And so grateful for your engagement and lots more to come, but hopefully we'll make it as clear as possible. So don't hesitate to ask questions because the things that you guys come up with are things that we may assume other people know or we haven't even thought of yet. So your fresh eyes to a certain extent on this are really valuable to us. So please let us know whatever you come up with.
Thank you so much for this, Wendy and team.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Michelle.
Our pleasure. And good luck, Meredith, for the ongoing dental
Oh
issue.
my goodness. I never knew a root canal could be so intense. This was like, whew. Yep, learn new things every day.
I feel like I have to say sorry on behalf of my profession.
Oh, it's totally fine. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like who knew? And then, you know, it's also the reality of you're like, wow, I guess we're just getting to that age where you need these kinds of things done. Okay. So it's okay. Lots of life lessons happening. It's cool.
Meredith, if you need anything, you can totally email me. I mean, not that I can help that much, but sometimes it's just good to have somebody.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, and I might do it because, whoa, this is like, yep, like I said, I had no idea that so many things could happen. And, you know, the BMT side of me is like, oh my gosh, well, we should just have you on like, you know, I don't know, Miro in the hospital, like, which is obviously, my husband is not immunocompromised, so that's a bit of an overkill, but that's what I would do with my patients. And I'm like, yeah, you need steroids like a mg per kg. And he's like, I don't know what that means, but it sounds intense. And I'm like, well, I mean, maybe it's a little bit much. I don't know. But it's all good. It's all good. But anyways. All right. Well, thanks you guys so much. I really appreciated all of it.
Yeah.
You're welcome. All right. Take care,
Bye.
everybody. We'll see you again soon.